Hello, everyone, and welcome to the spring series of Out to Lunch, organized by ESIP Education. My name is Margaret Mooney, and I'm happy to introduce Luann Dahlman, who will be presenting on story maps. And all of the spring, we have 4 Out to Lunches coming up, and they are all going to be in preparation for our summer workshop, July 18th, in Tucson, Arizona. We hope you can join us. Ready, Luann?
I am. Can you see my screen?
Not yet. But you got the, I handed it to you, right?
Yeah, we're just having maybe a delay again, which I'm hopeful will end.
I'm sure it will. And while we're waiting, I'd like to say that this summer is the 20th anniversary of ESIP, so there's going to be a celebration the evening of the workshop, which can be fun. I also wanted to just mention the presentations we have this spring in the Out to Lunch series. Today we have Luann doing story maps. In 2 weeks, we have Carla McCullough doing Image J. 2 weeks after that, one of my colleagues, Scott Lindstrom, is going to do SIFT, which is a software package to analyze satellite images. And then last one, the ESIP Education Chair and Vice Chair are going to be presenting on the summer workshop. So, and as soon as registration opens for the summer workshop, we'll also announce it during this spring series. Luann, what should we try now? Should I take it back and hand it to you again?
Oh,
no. Just saw your screen.
Okay, but I think we're just on the one screen instead of my main screen, but we're getting there. Can you still see my screen?
Yes, I can. Esri story maps. Just a second. I see that you clicked it. Yeah, I can see them.
Okay.
Good to go.
All righty. Thanks for being here, everyone, and everyone who decides to watch this later. I am showing off something that I enjoy. I'm not employed nor paid by Esri at all, but they have some cool technology that I think is worthwhile, so I wanted to show some people how easy it is to get started with story maps. Esri offers an incredible array of maps and data, and they make it freely available, much of it freely available, but they do want to know who's using it. So the first thing in order to use this technology is to get an account. The good news is educators around the world can get a free account through their school. You can, I did not find a single Esri page that didn't have some pointer to where to go to get an account. So that is a really important thing to do. What I'm going to show today is how to take a collection of assets. For instance, I've been thinking about fire, and put them together into something, a single interface that allows someone to explore it. And the cool thing is that it will always stay up to date. So essentially, I have a series of assets open in separate browser tabs. I have a nice picture of a forest fire, American Forest site that can give us some background information. The National Interagency Fire Service Center puts out an outlook each month for wildfires. And then the National Weather Service puts out a daily it shows all the alerts that have to do with fire weather. And instead of having all these 4 in separate tabs, I'd really like to glue them together into a slick-looking story map. If you haven't looked at story maps yet, just go to storymaps.arcgis.com. You will find all sorts of incredible examples. It's sort of interesting to me that they put up these galleries. It's sort of like maybe in the olden days when people were just discovering all the cool things you could do with PowerPoints. Like, I'm going to post my PowerPoint, because it's really about the content, but what they're showcasing here is the technology that allows you to put it together. And they really do give you ways to glue everything into a single URL rather than this separate tabs. Actually, I think I chose one that I really meant to go to, one that would load a little bit faster, because they are loading a lot of information from different portions of the internet. But you can do all sorts of fancy stuff. And it all works behind the scenes. You collect the assets and tell your story and put them together in a way that is very attractive and is really more about your content. So we want to, the first thing you need to do is get an account. And the second thing you need to do is get some maps. They've also made that very easy for you. The ArcGIS Living Atlas of the World gives you access to all sorts of maps that you can make your own. I'm just going to jump ahead in time and pretend like you have an account and you have some maps. I'm going to show you my AGOL, my ArcGIS online account. And here's some of the content I have within it. And what if I want to take those four things and glue them together into a story map? I'm just going to go here to create. It's an app that I want, and using a template. And they have all sorts of different templates. I happen to have a favorite one I use for story maps. I'm just going to go to a story map journal. And I'm going to create a web app out of it. I'm going to call it Potential for Wildfire. And you have to know what you're doing ahead of time so that you can add some tags, fire weather, wildfire, etc. And I'm going to say, yep, that's what I want this story map to be. And yes, this is what I've asked for. So I'm going to say start. You get lots of choices and they say, what do you want to call it? I already told you. So, and here we go. For this particular template, you get a main stage and a side panel, and it asks you, well, let's start filling them. The main stage, you can have a map, an image, a video, or an entire web page. And I'm actually going to start, like most of these, I like to just have an image to have a nice looking visual. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to upload one because I already selected that one from the site I showed. I'm going to upload that to have as my main graphic. And I'm just going to say, okay, and I went ahead and grabbed my text and put it in a separate window so I don't have to stop and type here. So I'm just going to paste in what I want here. I'm going to put some information here in the side panel, and I'm going to go ahead and, since I only want to put a few things in, I'm going to give a link to more information, and that's just that background link I was going to offer to people. I say okay, and I add, and we have my first section of the story map. I'm going to add another section. In this one, I am going to put in, first I have to give it a title, and I'm going to say monthly outlook. And I'm going to make this one an image also, but this one I'm going to use a link. And the link for this one is actually the URL here, the month one outlook. The good news is that when the month changes from April to May, month one will change to May, and this will be the May image. So I'm going to use that URL and put it here. I'm going to go to fit so that it doesn't crop it. And I'm going to say next. That's the main stage content, but I'm going to grab just a little bit of text. to put in that. And I have my second section. And then third, and here's where it really matters because these are called story maps. So what you really want to do is use maps, today's fire weather. And in this case, I'm going to leave it on map. I'm going to select a map that I have already created inside my ArcGIS online account. And it is this wildfire activity one. You can do all sorts of customization to it. I'm simply going to say next. And once again, I have a little bit of text that I prepared ahead of time for me to paste in there. Say add, and this will bring up the map that I'd already prepared that has gone out to get web services that give me all the alert areas that have to do with fire weather and also the active fires right now. I'm going to click save. And this is ready for sharing. So the good news is I can look at it now, and even though right now it says April, by the time it turns to May, that will turn to a May map. And this today's fire weather map will be getting tomorrow's fire weather. These are set up so that any click on a highlighted area will give you summary information so that you can get more information about the weather forecast office that put this out, etc. But essentially, we've taken a series of assets and glued them together into a single application called a story map. And that's about how easy it is. So I'll open it up for questions, comments, things like that.
Thanks, Luann. I've unmuted everyone, so everyone can unmute themselves also now, or you can text in the chat box. But I'll start with one question. So NOAA data in the classroom, those are all story maps, right?
They are. Those are pretty fancy.
But are they, does that mean they use Esri? Is story map a word that belongs to Esri?
I believe it does, although there are some generic forms of it as well, something called a web app builder that's not a story map but would produce something similar. What I don't show, it's, you know, behind the scenes is all the code that glues all these things together. You can only get a little bit of a hint of it. As a matter of fact, if I go to my edit interface and I look at the source, it's got a lot of markup and such, but the entire application is really just a bunch of code. So they've made it very easy. You don't even need to know what it looks like to build these.
I see Becky Reed says, I love how easy it is to create a simple story map. And showing the code that you just showed us, that kind of goes down the coding, computing in the classroom rabbit hole that we've been exploring.
It does. It's a rabbit hole, though.
Does anyone else have any questions?
I do have a simple story map that I made for our heat health folks that essentially is the same thing. You start with an image to give this, you know, some context, and then start by bringing in maps that you've made. One thing I'm reminded of is, and I don't mean to scare anyone away with this, but when I took calculus in college, it was always a big, you know, what is calculus? And it's like, and when you got into the class, you found out, oh, it's two new things and all the algebra you should have already known. Story maps is all, two new things, gluing them together. But the thing that makes them good is the skills that you gain working in Esri's maps, in ArcGIS Online, being able to make and save maps and have them show what you want to show. Again, I'm not paid by Esri for anything. I'm just a fan and thought I'd share these things.
Hey, Luann, I have a question now. It's
yes.
Becky. So you talked about the skills that you need to, before you build a story map. Would you suggest somebody who's wants to get into this to just begin gathering interesting maps that have to do with things they like, and then
yes,
put a story map together?
Yes. As a matter of fact, here it is, the Living Atlas of the World. This is the set of maps that Esri makes available. Some of them you'll click and it'll say, well, you've got to have an account to fool with this one. But many of them you can simply open and save into your own account. So if you were concerned with, have a big Earth observation section here, for instance, you can go there, and any map that comes up, you can, they have two interfaces, by the way. The first interface is the metadata about the map. Gives you a description and a lot of things like that. And then there'll be a link that says open in map viewer. So when you get to something like this, you can see what it is. And then if you open it in the map viewer, then if you're signed in, there's an opportunity to save it to your own account. So whoever has made it, it doesn't matter, but I can go to the save button and save as, and it will save in my account. Then it's available to me to put into story maps. I can make changes to it or not, but pretty powerful with a lot of already prepared maps.
That's great, and that seems like a good place to start. Gathering things of interest, and then you might think of, oh, these go together, I can make a map of that.
Yeah, if you're already familiar with Esri Maps and you have an account and you've collected some and you're really ready to just now make a story map, the storymaps.arcgis.com has a lot of really great resources for that. There's a blog. I learn new things all the time on the blog. There's a developer's corner. But again, Esri doesn't have a single page that I can find that doesn't help you get to your next step if you're not there. I think working with others, it's like if you sit down and say, let's make story maps, then you can learn from one another as you go is a great way to do it.
Luann, earlier yes. Margaret asked a question about story maps on the NOAA site. Where is that?
I was talking about data in the classrooms. Data in the classroom.
It's the data in the classroom site. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. And Dan Pasut, who now works for Esri, was running an Esri server at NOAA, and it has really developed some skills to make that stand up and sing. It includes quizzes within the sidebars and all sorts of fancy stuff going on.
We actually had a presentation on that on one of the first sessions of data in the Out2Lunch. Dan presented that. So you can go back and look at that 10-minute, 15-minute webinar at any time.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Luann, and thank you everyone for tuning in. What a great kickoff. I hope everyone can join us in 2 weeks for Out2Lunch. Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret.